You may remember in 2019 with the release of Help Wanted, Scott Cawthon just casually dropped one of the biggest, most important changes to the Fnaf lore.
Them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending.
Yes, that is a picture of Scott in his own game, calling himself an indie game developer. He just made himself canon. Well, actually, even with this image of him being in the game, he has gone on record to say that he himself is not canon to the lore. So what's the deal? Is there just some random indie game developer that just so happens to look exactly like him? Yes. But I actually believe this is not the first time we've seen this indie game developer. In fact, I believe we've already seen him by the time the 5th installment of this franchise is out. And no, I'm not talking about Sister Location. I'm saying that we've seen him in Fnaf World.
Such a bad bitch though.
Fnaf World, you know Fnaf World. Unfortunately, we all know Fnaf World. I would say it's like the black sheep of the Fnaf franchise, but I feel like every game at this point is the black sheep. But I will admit Fnaf World is the only Fnaf game where people are questioning whether or not it's canon. Until later this year. Fnaf World is like the problem child of the Fnaf games. Nobody, not even Scott, knows what to do with it. It got released, it was disowned, it got fixed, it was praised, it got disowned, it was this big... There was definitely some sort of lore importance that was meant to be here. Whether it's the I will put you back together, or the fact that the hub world looks like a giant brain. But most importantly, all of this lore seems to relate specifically to when this game was released. Those two random details I just mentioned are very heavily relating back to Fnaf 4, along with there being an ending involving a man in a desk. That seems to very heavily be hinting at Sister Location.
The show will begin momentarily. Everyone, please stay in your seats.
This has always been very odd because Fnaf 4 and Fnaf 5 are two very, very different parts of the timeline. And the way that the Sister Location tease quite literally ended with the coming soon at the end is a little bit fourth wall break like. Very similar to what we actually see throughout the rest of this game. There are many fourth wall breaks and meta moments throughout the entirety of Fnaf World. In fact, one of the bosses is Scott Cawthon's head himself. Wait a minute. Help Wanted literally opens up with talking about an indie game developer who has the exact facial features of Scott. If we are to believe that Fnaf World is canon to the rest of the games, then this literally has to be the exact same indie game developer. Am I saying that the indie game developer that Fazbear Entertainment hired ended up somehow getting decapitated and thrown into this weird robot sci-fi looking thing? Of course not, but what I am saying is that what if Fnaf World was also another game made by the indie game developer? Going back to what I said earlier, the Fnaf World seems to have the most fourth wall breaks out of any Fnaf game. What if these fourth wall breaks are because this is a legitimate in-universe video game? This would very nicely parallel the indie game developer back to Scott Cawthon's history. Since Fnaf World is not only an RPG, but is also very similar in art style to some of the games that Scott made before FNAF, what if in universe that indie game developer also made Scott's past games, therefore getting Scott's same art style when it comes to Fnaf World? This connection back to the indie game developer would also provide answers to some of the biggest questions in Fnaf World, most importantly its involvement with Fnaf 4 and Fnaf 5. The reason it's so heavily teasing Sister Location at the end and alluding towards Fnaf 4 at the beginning is because those two games are also in-universe games. We already know that all the past Fnaf games up until a certain point may have been in-universe games created by the indie game developer, and having Fnaf World be a game that the indie game developer released in between creating Fnaf 4 and Fnaf 5 would explain all these fourth wall breaks and all these allusions towards the other games. But if this theory is the case, then so what? What would it even matter having this brand new connection towards the indie game developer? Well, if my theory is correct, then I believe we can also use this to solve the true identity of one of Fnaf World's biggest mysteries. Who is Desk Guy. Desk Guy's identity has always been one giant mystery. For a while, everybody thought that it was Henry Emily, until suddenly Fnaf 6 released and surprise, surprise, Henry's still alive. And the weirdest part of all about Desk Guy is that it seems like the ending is alluding to the fact that he built Circus Baby. So whoever Desk Guy is has to be some sort of inventor in some shape or form. But if it can't be Henry and it can't be William, then who else is left? Well, as y'all can probably already tell from the thumbnail, I believe that Desk Guy's true identity is the indie game developer from Help Wanted. Now, I know on the surface this may seem unlikely, but let's go over the dialogue of Desk Guy again. He starts off saying some words that are so vague they could honestly mean just about anything, but the real meat and bones is when he asks, "You deactivated my games?" For everyone who believes this is Henry, I'm not too sure what he would mean by games. Henry builds animatronics, he doesn't create video games. But you want to know who does create video games? He goes on to say, "I didn't know what else to do. I don't want to disappoint people." Now, if the indie game developer is meant to be a parallel to Scott Cawthon, then this would add up. Scott Cawthon has said that one of his biggest struggles with the Fnaf franchise is making sure he doesn't disappoint the fans. So far this checks out, but now we're about to get into the most controversial bit. But my mind isn't right. I made something terrible. Her name is Baby. Now, a lot of people relate these lines back to Henry because of the original Fnaf novel trilogy, where Henry ends up creating a sort of robot to kill himself with. Can I say that word on YouTube? It's fine. Except this is where most people seem to be confused. A couple weeks ago, I had a dream that I was rereading the Fourth Closet graphic novel whenever I stumbled across some sort of framed photo that showed Gregory and Cassie for some reason. I began freaking out in my dream because it's like, oh, there's this big Easter egg to like the future lore that nobody noticed whenever this graphic novel first came out. And then I woke up and questioned why the fuck I have the weirdest ass dreams. But that dream inspired me to later on during that week read the Fourth Closet graphic novel over again, which was actually my first time reading it fully in just one single sitting. And although now I can confirm that there is no framed picture of Gregory and Cassie in there, I also realized something else. In the books, Henry did build an adult robot version of his daughter that ended up getting stolen by William Afton, turned into Circus Baby, and then possessed by the actual Elizabeth Afton, creating this weird creature that is sort of like three different things all just compiled into one robot shape-shifting machine. But also Henry has a separate robot that was designed specifically for him to take his own life. In the books, it was never Circus Baby that took the life of Henry, it was this other killer robot. Plus, in the game's lore, we have no evidence or reason to back up there being multiple robot versions of Charlie Emily. So connecting Henry from the games to Henry from the books to explain why he could be the identity of Desk Guy just doesn't really add up. And it's also kind of already assumed that William's the one who built Circus Baby in the games. But since I believe that Desk Guy is the indie game developer, how am I going to get away with saying that the indie game developer is the creator of Baby? Well, guess what? He is the creator of Baby. He created all the animatronics in some shape or form because he developed the games they're in. From a video game coding standpoint, he is the creator of Baby because he created the sister location video game. Whether Fazbear Entertainment told him to or not, he is technically the person who created Baby because he created the sister location video game as a whole. So now all that's left to be explained is the death of Desk Guy. We see some sort of animatronic with glowing yellow eyes presumably come in and kill him. Some people believe that this was Baby, others believe that it was Henry's suicide bot. But before we jump to any conclusions, let's really think about what he's been telling us throughout the entirety of this ending. Desk Guy seems to be regretful. He acknowledges that not only did we manage to break his game, but that he also ended up creating something even worse. If this was really the indie game developer that Fazbear Entertainment hired all along, then this is probably meant to expose what he thinks about the Fnaf games himself. Seeing what they're doing and how these games are sort of, in a way, re-establishing Fazbear Entertainment to be bigger and better than ever, he is realizing the mistake that he's done creating these games for them, therefore causing him to be resentful and regretful when it comes to the development of these games. However, as we all know, Fazbear Entertainment wants to make sure that they can succeed no matter what. And it could be very possible around this time, especially with the implications of special delivery, that Fazbear Entertainment has the power and money to mass produce animatronics. I wouldn't be surprised if once they were fully done with the indie game developer and he was feeling sort of resentful towards Fazbear Entertainment, to make sure he never steps out of line or says anything he shouldn't say, they send a robot to go kill him. Hence the death of Deskman in Fnaf World. But what do y'all think about this connection? Although I highly doubt Scott Cawthon originally made Fnaf World with this specific theory in mind, I wouldn't be surprised if he later on, whenever making specifically Help Wanted, thought back to Fnaf World and decided that maybe Deskman was actually the indie game developer after all. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy, and I will see y'all in the next video. Goodbye!